You tell yourself you're being responsible with money. You pay your bills on time. You don't buy anything too crazy. Maybe you even have a savings account, technically. But somehow, at the end of every month, you're in the exact same place. The balance barely moves. The goals stay out of reach. You watch other people take vacations, buy homes, talk about investments, and you wonder what they know that you don't. Here's what's actually happening. It's not that you're bad with money. It's not that you don't make enough, though that might also be true. It's that you've developed a set of habits that feel completely normal, habits that millions of people share, but that quietly drain your financial future without ever triggering an alarm. These aren't dramatic mistakes. You won't see them coming. They don't feel like problems while you're doing them. They feel responsible, reasonable, like what everyone does. That's exactly why they work so well at keeping you broke. This video breaks down 11 money habits that are keeping you poor. Some of these will sting a little. You might recognize yourself in more than one, maybe more than 5. That discomfort is the point, because once you see what you're doing, you can finally stop doing it. Let's get into it. Number 1, paying yourself last. Here's how most people handle a paycheck. The money lands in their account. Rent comes out, utilities come out, the car payment, the phone bill, the subscriptions, the minimum payments on credit cards, all of it gets handled first. Then comes the social stuff, dinners, drinks, that concert ticket everyone's buying, whatever's trendy this week. And then, at the very end, whatever's left over supposedly goes to savings. Except nothing is ever left over. There's always another expense, always something that feels necessary, always a reason why this month isn't the month to finally start saving seriously. This is paying yourself last, treating your future as an afterthought that gets funded with scraps. The problem isn't discipline. The problem is sequence. By the time you've paid everyone else, there's nothing remaining for the person who actually worked to earn that money in the first place. Wealthy people do the exact opposite. The moment income arrives, a percentage moves immediately into savings and investments, automatically, before they see it, before they can spend it, before lifestyle has a chance to consume it. This isn't about willpower, it's about architecture. When saving happens first, you adjust your spending to whatever remains. When saving happens last, you adjust your saving to whatever remains, which is nothing. Treat saving like a bill that gets paid first, not last, not whatever's left. First, 10% minimum. Automate it so it happens without your involvement. Put it in a separate account you don't check regularly so you're not tempted to dip into it. When you pay yourself last, you guarantee yourself nothing. When you pay yourself first, you guarantee yourself a future. Number 2, spending to save. You bought those shoes because they were 40% off. You grabbed 3 of something you only needed 1 of because it was buy 2, get 1 free. You clicked checkout on Prime Day for items that weren't even on your radar until the sale notification popped up. This is spending to save, one of the most effective psychological traps in modern marketing. The logic feels airtight. If something normally costs $100 and you get it for $60, you saved $40, right? Wrong. You spent $60. The $40 you saved never existed. It was a number on a screen designed to make you feel like you won something. You can't deposit savings from a purchase into your bank account. The only money that counts is money you actually keep. You save 100% of the money you don't spend at all. Sales exist because they work. They create urgency, they generate fear of missing out, they manufacture a deadline that forces a decision before you've had time to think clearly. They transform browsing into buying. And they're most effective on people who believe they're being smart by hunting for deals. The Sephora sale, Amazon Prime Day, Black Friday, clientele events, flash sales, limited time offers. All of them operate on the same principle. Make you feel like waiting costs more than buying. If you weren't planning to buy something before the sale started, if you weren't willing to pay full price for it, then the discounted price isn't a bargain. It's just a smaller amount of money you didn't need to spend. The best deal is the one you don't take. Number 3, not tracking where your money actually goes. Ask most people how much they spend on food each month and they'll guess. Ask how much goes to subscriptions and they'll hesitate. Ask for a complete picture of their monthly expenses and they'll change the subject. This is flying blind. You can't control what you don't measure. And when you don't measure spending, spending controls you. The discomfort of tracking is real. Seeing numbers in black and white forces honesty. You can't hide from $200 in DoorDash charges when they're staring back at you in a spreadsheet. You can't pretend the subscription creep isn't happening when the total reaches $90 for services you barely use. You can't ignore the gap between what you think you spend and what you actually spend. That discomfort is exactly the point. Most people avoid tracking because they don't want to know. Knowing creates accountability. Knowing removes the comfortable vagueness that lets bad habits continue unchallenged. It's easier to stay in the fog than to confront what's actually happening. Until you know precisely what comes in and what goes out, you cannot make intelligent decisions about your money. You're reacting instead of planning. You're surprised at the end of every month instead of in control from the beginning. You're hoping things work out instead of engineering an outcome. Track everything for 1 month. Every coffee, every impulse purchase, every automatic charge you forgot was happening, every rounded up tip, every "it's only $5" that you dismissed as irrelevant. The picture that emerges will be uncomfortable, and it will show you exactly where your money has been disappearing. Number 4, lifestyle creep. You got the raise. Finally. More money hitting your account every 2 weeks. You worked hard for it. You deserve to enjoy it. So you upgrade the apartment, get a nicer car, start eating out more often, take better vacations, upgrade your wardrobe, maybe move to a neighborhood that better reflects your new income. After all, you can afford it now. 6 months later, you realize something unsettling. You're making more than ever, and you feel exactly as broke as you did before. The bank balance looks the same. The financial stress hasn't changed. The goals remain equally out of reach. The only difference is that your baseline expenses have risen to consume everything the raise was supposed to provide. This is lifestyle creep. Your spending rises automatically to match your income. Luxuries quietly transform into necessities. The nicer apartment stops feeling nice and starts feeling normal. The restaurants become routine. The lifestyle that felt like a reward becomes a new floor you can't easily drop below. Here's the trap. Once you've inflated your lifestyle, deflating it feels like failure, feels like going backward, feels like admitting you overextended. So you stay trapped at a higher spending level, running faster just to stay in place, or worse, going into debt to maintain a standard you never actually secured. The raise was supposed to change your financial trajectory. Instead, it changed nothing because you spent the difference instead of saving or investing it. The opportunity came and went, absorbed entirely by upgraded consumption. Lifestyle upgrades aren't inherently bad, but they should happen slowly, deliberately, after your financial foundation is secure, not immediately, not automatically, not at the expense of everything you're trying to build. Number 5, using credit cards as a crutch. You swipe now, you'll figure it out later. By the time the bill comes, you'll have been paid again. It'll work out. Except it keeps not quite working out. The balance rolls over, interest compounds. The debt grows slowly enough that you don't panic, but steadily enough that you never escape. 1 month, you almost pay it off, then something comes up, and you're back where you started. Over 60% of Americans carry credit card debt. The average balance exceeds $5,000. Average interest rates sit above 20%. That means if you're only making minimum payments, you're not paying down debt, you're paying the bank for the privilege of owing them money indefinitely. Credit cards aren't evil. They offer convenience, fraud protection, and sometimes meaningful rewards. But they become deadly when they function as a crutch, a way to spend money you don't have while telling yourself you'll have it later. The psychological problem runs deeper than the math. Credit cards separate the pain of payment from the pleasure of purchase. You get the item now. The discomfort happens weeks later, diluted across a statement full of transactions you barely remember. You tap your phone, wave your watch, click one button, and the money feels fake, abstract, not quite real. This broken feedback loop makes overspending feel painless in the moment, which is exactly why it's so easy to keep doing. A simple rule fixes this. If you can't pay for it in full today, you can't afford it. The credit card is for convenience, not for extending your budget beyond what actually exists. Use it like a debit card, only spending what you already have sitting in your account. and the crutch becomes a tool instead of a trap. Number 6, buying for your fantasy self. Your closet is full of clothes you never wear. Exercise equipment gathers dust in the corner. Books stack up unread. Supplies for hobbies you haven't touched in months take up space you don't have. That guitar, those running shoes, the elaborate kitchen gadgets still in their packaging. This is fantasy self-spending, buying for the person you imagine becoming instead of the person you actually are. The fantasy self runs marathons, so you bought the running shoes. The fantasy self cooks elaborate meals, so you bought the expensive cookware. The fantasy self reads a book a week, so you bought novels that now function as furniture. The fantasy self is sophisticated and cultured, so you bought things that sophisticated cultured people supposedly own. The purchases feel aspirational, forward-thinking, like investments in a better version of yourself. But the better version never quite materializes, and you're left with expensive proof of intentions that went nowhere. Fantasy self-spending isn't always bad. Sometimes you need to invest in the gear that supports a genuine transformation you're committed to making. Dress for the job you want. Prepare for the life you're building. That's valid. The problem is when buying becomes a substitute for doing. When acquisition masquerades as action. When you purchase the costume without ever performing the role. The spending feels like progress while nothing actually changes. Before spending money on the person you want to become, ask one question. What have I actually done, recently, consistently, that proves I'm becoming that person? If the answer is nothing, the purchase is probably just expensive cosplay for a life you're not living. Number 7, saying yes to everything. The dinner invitation comes. You're trying to save money, but you don't want to be the person who can't hang. So you say yes. Then the weekend trip. Then the concert tickets. Then the birthday celebration at the expensive restaurant no one actually likes, but someone already booked. Then drinks after work because everyone's going. Then the group gift you didn't budget for. Then the bachelorette party in another city. Every individual yes feels small, social, harmless. You don't want to be the person who's always declining. You don't want to seem broke. You don't want to miss out on memories and moments that everyone else is experiencing. But every yes to spending is a no to something else. Every $100 you spend because you didn't want to miss out is $100 not going toward the goal you claim matters to you. The vacation you're supposedly saving for. The debt you're supposedly paying off. The investment account you're supposedly funding. Peer pressure doesn't end in high school. It just gets more expensive. The pressure to match your friends' spending, to signal that you're doing fine, that you're fun, that you can keep up, costs real money. Money that often gets charged to credit cards because the cash isn't actually there. Money that creates stress you hide behind a smile at the very events that caused it. Saying no is a skill. It feels uncomfortable at first. You worry about perception, about being judged, about missing out, about damaging relationships that matter to you. But the people who actually care about you will understand when you're honest about financial boundaries. The ones who don't understand, who pressure you to spend beyond your means, weren't worth the expense anyway. A good time doesn't require expensive venues. Friendship doesn't require financial strain. Learn to suggest alternatives. Learn to say, not this time, without over-explaining. The discomfort of that conversation is temporary. The debt you avoid is permanent. Number 8, waiting for more money to start. You'll start budgeting when you make more. You'll start investing when you have real money. You'll get your finances together once the income catches up. Once you finish paying off this one thing, once you get the promotion, once things settle down. This is when thinking, and it's one of the most effective ways to guarantee you never actually start. The perfect time doesn't arrive. There's always a reason to delay. There's always an excuse that feels legitimate in the moment. And while you're waiting for circumstances to improve, years pass. Compound interest works for other people. Financial literacy stays theoretical instead of practical. The gap between where you are and where you could be widens silently. Here's the truth. If you can't manage a little money, you won't magically manage a lot of money. The skills that matter, budgeting, tracking, prioritizing, saying no, thinking long-term, are built through practice. They don't appear automatically when a larger number hits your account. In fact, the opposite often happens. People who suddenly receive more income without having built those skills simply spend more. They upgrade their lifestyle immediately, drift into debt just as easily, and wonder why more money didn't solve anything. The habits they developed at a lower income scale perfectly to a higher one, just with bigger numbers and bigger problems. Money management is a skill. Like any skill, it develops through repetition, mistakes, and adjustment. Waiting for more money before practicing that skill is like waiting to be healthy before exercising. You have the logic exactly backward. Start now, with whatever you have. The amount doesn't matter. The habit does. Number 9. Ignoring small expenses because they feel insignificant. $5 here, $8 there, a coffee, a snack, an app subscription you forgot existed. Rounding up for charity at checkout because saying no feels awkward. The convenience fee you didn't bother questioning. The "it's only a few bucks" you dismissed without a second thought. Each transaction is small enough to ignore, insignificant in isolation, not worth the mental energy of tracking or questioning, definitely not worth the social discomfort of being the person who cares about a few dollars. But small expenses compound the same way investments do, just in the wrong direction. $5 a day is $150 a month, $1,800 a year, $20,000 over a decade before you even account for what that money could have earned if invested instead. $30 in forgotten subscriptions is $360 annually for services you probably don't even remember signing up for. The coffee isn't the problem. The unawareness is the problem. When small expenses escape scrutiny because they feel trivial, they multiply without accountability. The cumulative effect becomes massive, while each individual moment stays beneath your threshold of attention. Death by 1,000 cuts is still death. Your budget doesn't care whether money left in large dramatic chunks or tiny painless drips. It only knows the total. I'm not saying never buy coffee. I'm not saying obsess over every dollar to the point of exhaustion. I'm saying know what you're spending. Know the monthly total. Make it a conscious choice rather than an invisible leak. The goal isn't deprivation, it's awareness. Awareness lets you decide intentionally instead of bleeding money by default. Number 10, treating investing as something for later. You'll invest when you have more money, when you know more about how markets work, when the timing feels right, when you're not so busy, when the market stops being scary, when you've finished paying off everything else, when you feel ready. Meanwhile, time passes. The most powerful wealth-building force in existence, compound interest, works for everyone except you, because you keep waiting for conditions to improve. Here's what waiting costs. Someone who invests $200 monthly, starting at age 25, will have roughly $600,000 by 65, assuming average market returns. Someone who starts at 35 with the same monthly amount ends up with roughly $270,000. 10 years of delay cuts the outcome by more than half. The math is brutal because compound growth is exponential. Early money has decades to multiply. Late money barely has time to grow. The advantage of starting young is irreplaceable, and every year you wait is an advantage you'll never get back. The excuses feel reasonable in the moment. You don't know enough. You don't have enough. The market seems complicated. You'll get around to it. But reasonable excuses still produce real consequences. While you're waiting to feel ready, time, your single greatest asset, disappears. You don't need to be an expert. You don't need to pick individual stocks or time the market or understand complex financial instruments. A simple index fund that tracks the total market requires no special knowledge and has historically delivered average returns around 10% annually. Open an account. Set up automatic transfers. Let time do what time does. The longer you wait, the harder you'll have to work later. Start now, even if it's $50 a month. The habit matters more than the amount. Number 11, refusing to invest in financial knowledge. You'll spend $50 on dinner without blinking, $200 on shoes you might wear twice, $500 on a weekend trip you'll barely remember in 6 months, thousands annually on things that provide momentary pleasure and nothing more. But spend money, or even significant time, On learning how personal finance actually works, that feels optional, unnecessary, something you'll get around to eventually. This is the most expensive habit on this list. Financial illiteracy costs the average American over $1,000 per year in direct losses, fees paid, interest accumulated, preventable mistakes made, opportunities ignored. The indirect costs are worse. The missed investment returns that compound for decades. The years spent in debt that could have been avoided with different decisions. The retirement that never becomes possible because the math was never understood. Every other habit on this list traces back to this one. You pay yourself last because nobody taught you to do otherwise. You spend to save because you don't recognize the psychological trap. You let lifestyle creep consume raises because you don't understand how wealth actually builds. You wait to invest because it feels complicated and nobody showed you how simple it can be. You use credit cards as a crutch because the true cost of interest never became viscerally real. The patterns that keep people broke aren't random. They're predictable. They follow the same logic. They exploit the same gaps in understanding. And they continue indefinitely until knowledge interrupts them. The fix isn't complicated. It's just learning, genuinely learning, how money works, how debt compounds against you, how credit scores are calculated and why they matter, how retirement accounts create tax advantages that most people ignore, how to budget without feeling restricted, how to invest without being an expert, how to build systems that make good decisions automatic. That knowledge exists. It's accessible. But you have to prioritize acquiring it the way you prioritize everything else that matters to you. Here's what ties all of this together. Every habit on this list has the same root cause. Somewhere along the way, nobody taught you how money actually works, so you defaulted to intuition, imitation, and whatever felt normal based on what you saw growing up. Paying yourself last feels normal because that's how everyone around you does it. Lifestyle creep feels earned because upgrading is what you're supposed to do when income rises. Credit cards as a crutch feel manageable because everyone carries a balance. Waiting to invest feels reasonable because the market seems complicated and scary. Saying yes to everything feels necessary because you don't want to be left out. These patterns feel natural, but they're not neutral. They're expensive. They have costs that compound over years and decades. Every year you operate under financial defaults instead of financial literacy, you fall further behind where you could be. I made a complete breakdown of financial literacy that covers everything the school system never taught you. How debt actually works, how credit scores are calculated, how retirement accounts create tax advantages most people ignore, how compound interest builds wealth when it's working for you instead of against you, how to build systems that automate good decisions so you don't have to rely on willpower alone. Links right here. If more than one habit on this list felt uncomfortably familiar, that video is your next step. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Money habits don't fix themselves. Awareness isn't automatic. The patterns that keep you broke will keep you broke until you deliberately interrupt them with knowledge and systems that work differently. You've now seen 11 of those patterns. You know what to look for. You felt the discomfort of recognition. That's literally me moment that means something needs to change. The question is what you do with that information. Keep doing what you've been doing and expect the same results. Stay comfortable in patterns that feel normal while they quietly cost you everything. Or start building the foundation that actually lets you keep, grow, and control the money you work so hard to earn. The habits that got you here won't get you there. Change starts when you decide the discomfort of staying the same finally exceeds the discomfort of doing something different. That decision is yours, and the best time to make it is right now.